and we've each left our mark on the other.
What mark did he leave on you?
Hello, and welcome. My name is Malin, and today I wanted to talk about two of my favorite queers from the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy, Captain Jack Sparrow and Lord Cutler Beckett. If you're new to my channel, I am actually new to YouTube in general, so I hope that you stick around and check out this video, engage with me in the comments about your own headcanons, and check out some of my other videos on Hell of a Boss and some other book reviews that I've done. With all that being said, let's go ahead and discuss this supposed mark that was left behind on Cutler Beckett by Captain Jack Sparrow that I think is more than just a blemish on his resume. So first, let's talk about who is the absolute icon that is Lord Cutler Beckett. In the movies, what audiences know and learn for sure is that Cutler Beckett is the man in charge of the East India Trading Company, which is England's largest import and export corporation. He ordered Will and Elizabeth to be arrested at the start of the second movie, Dead Man's Chest, which is my personal favorite, because they aided and abetted a pirate. And audiences also know that he and Jack have a secret sordid history, which was introduced in a one-liner in movie 1, where Norrington mentions the P brand, the letter P, on Captain Jack's arm, saying, "Had a brush with the East India Trading Company, did we?" So that is established early on. Thus, this adds to Cutler Beckett's motivation for punishing Elizabeth and Will due to their proximity to somebody who deeply wronged him in the past. According to my sister, had this story been a contemporary one, Beckett would have probably ended up stalking and kidnapping Jack's dog in order to get his attention again. But we're stuck with 1600 rules. By the time the third movie rolls along, we learn that with the power of Davy Jones's heart in his hands, Beckett has become the king's representative, basically like his right-hand man, which offers him an overwhelming reach of power over the seas. Now, when Will is asking Beckett, what mark did he leave on you, it could totally be wordplay, and the word mark left behind on Beckett actually refers to letters of marque, aka a pardon. We already know that these exist because of the start of movie 2. Beckett is offering these letters of marque to Jack, specifically asking Will to deliver them so that he can exchange them for something else. He uses these letters of marque to manipulate Will, Elizabeth, and Captain Norrington throughout the movie. He even seems more than happy to part with these letters, knowing that whatever it is that he's trading for is far more valuable than a pardon. Maybe in the past, Beckett and Jack decided to be figurative letters of marque for one another, letting the other live and let live, not interfering in each other's affairs unless it couldn't be avoided anymore, the way that letters of marque do in real life. We've each left our mark on the other. But we are here, or I am here, because I think it's more than a figurative letter of marque or tarnished reputation. I think that Jack and Beckett had a romantic relationship that fell apart. But before I go any deeper into the relationship between Jack and Beckett, I want to talk about the relationship between Beckett and Elizabeth and the idea of freedom that she and Jack represent. In terms of Beckett and Elizabeth, unlike Barbossa from movie 1, who took her hostage, Beckett seems to have a different fascination with Elizabeth, outside of the fact that she has a living, breathing body, she can taste things and drink wine without it trickling out of her skeleton, she doesn't turn into a skeleton when she's exposed to moonlight. Barbossa is still interested in her in the fact that she's a beautiful woman, sexually or otherwise. Beckett, on the other hand, does not seem to share that same interest. Beckett also differs from Jack, Sao Fang, and Will in the aspect that Beckett doesn't seem to be interested in her romantically or sexually. He's not interested in possessing or getting to know her body, wink wink, in that way. He's more interested in something else. His desires are not so provincial. My personal theory is that Beckett's interests in Elizabeth lie in her personality and how she carries herself. In other words, his interests lie in his fascination in her similarities to Jack Sparrow. So as we know, rather than the demure, soft-spoken woman of her class and her culture, Elizabeth is headstrong. She's snarky, she's even boyish in her appearance and her dress, diving into an androgynous appearance at times. And she is quite unlike the stereotypes and expectations of her gender. She even marries a person, quote, lower than herself in economic status, despite it being like a tarnish on her own reputation. She does it for love and not for societal expectations, not for economic growth or anything like that, the way that a marriage to Norrington would have upgraded her status. She is untraditional. Thus, because I believe Beckett bats for the same team that Elizabeth does, he envies her ability to be so fluid and comfortable and uncontested in her identity, leaving him feeling trapped in this single rigid definition that he's unable to break due to the societal and occupational norms and acceptances of his own culture in Britain, especially as a man with the power that he has and the connections that he has. Being the right-hand man to the king hardly leaves you a lot of wiggle room for being openly gay, I'm sure. Personally think that the jealousy and admiration that Beckett has drives him to pursue her in an attempt to manipulate and can control her. Because if he can control her, he can control anybody else who's like her and prove that he is in the right for controlling his own personality, his own identity in a rigid stance that he does. I think that when Beckett looks at Elizabeth, he feels a lot of regret. Regret for not pursuing his own identity, his own freedom. Regret for letting himself fall into societal and occupational expectations that are set upon him in his position. And when he looks at Elizabeth, he sees Jack's influence on her and clearly sees that she would have made the opposite decision that Beckett would have. And maybe, just maybe, had Beckett chosen to be with Jack and followed that same free and fluid lifestyle the same way that Will and Elizabeth do, he could have been that girl boss pirate too with his bisexual pirate boyfriend, but he didn't. Now let's go ahead and talk about the actual topic of this video, which are Jack and Beckett. So we already know that in the start of movie 2, the relationship between Jack and Beckett was dropped because of the conversation between Will and Beckett. Beckett is trying to pry information out of Will, explaining that him and Jack had done business in the past, that they'd left that subsequent mark on one another, and Beckett holds up that pirate brand to emphasize his point and connect it back to the first movie, which was the reveal of Jack's own pirate brand. So, on a literal level, audiences can take this as Beckett receiving a stain on his resume and his reputation. It likely slowed his professional growth for several years, and it soiled the ambition that he had to want to hold power early on. The animosity between them feels natural, organic, it feels believable, and for the plot beats of a Disney movie, it works great, and it has no other hidden nuances. Until I come in. So first, let's talk about what is literally and physically connecting Jack and Beckett from the start of the movie. And no, it's not a kiss. It's the compass, right? As we know, it points to the thing that you want most, which is super fascinating, right? Right? And yet, in this scene, Beckett doesn't kill Jack for a myriad of reasons, but he doesn't even seem remotely interested in doing so from the get. Which brings me to a particular scene comparison that I want to do, which I view as pseudo-evidence to my theory. So during this scene, we can see that Elizabeth is armed with a gun as she confronts Beckett in his office, all by himself, but you can easily see as the scene progresses, he's the one in control here. He's even seems slightly amused and at times envious of Elizabeth in her ability to push her agenda so fiercely and unapologetically. When he's looking at Elizabeth, I like to think that he sees what could have been. Like I said, he could have been that girl boss pirate bitch like Elizabeth had he chosen his identity and an ideology of freedom like Jack does, but he's decided to follow that societal, rigid character of a man in power in England and thus puts him in a particular box that he can't escape. At one point, Elizabeth even aggressively mentions that he robbed her of her wedding night, and Beckett's response to her is this.
Marriage interrupted, or fate intervenes.
He says, or fate intervenes. Here, it's almost clearly exposing that Beckett has given himself up to a power higher than he is. Fate, right? It doesn't have to be God or anything like that, but he has no say in his destiny. He has no say in the day-to-day things that happen to him. That's his fundamental belief. Whereas Elizabeth and Jack directly challenge that by saying, no, I control my fate. I control what happens to me on my day-to-day. Even here at the end of the scene, as Elizabeth is leaving, she's still pointing her armed weapon at Beckett, who has nothing but a candlestick in his hand, and she flees the room with terror written on her face, despite being the one in control of this moment. Beckett holds the cards here. But if we look at this opposing scene from movie 3 with Jack and Beckett, almost the complete opposite is true here. So as we see at the start of the scene, Jack is in shackles. He is imprisoned on a boat that is not his. He's surrounded by military officers that serve Beckett, and he is, again, alone in Beckett's office, without a place to go. But if we look, it's Jack who's in control of this scene, despite being the one not in power, right? There's even a moment here where it seems a little flirtatious between the two. In this part of the scene, Jack is revealing the secrets about Shipwreck Cove and the pirate lords, how to ambush them and get the sort of jump on the attack that he's looking for, listening with intent, leaning in, hearing more of what Jack wants to say, craving that information, even hovering so close, you're like, oh, sus, in my opinion. And Jack eventually does mention the compass pointing to him. You want me dead. But two things can be true at the exact same time. I'm just saying. So what did you guys think? I don't think this is entirely serious. It really was me just having a lot of fun playing with some light subtext in the movies between two characters played by two incredible actors who bring just so much life to the screen and the people that they play. I love to think that Beckett and Jack had this hot, romantic, passionate affair in their youth that led them to be that lovers to enemies trope, and they have very heavy sexual tension in the room anytime that they're with each other. Hi, this is post-video recording / editing Malin chiming in to say I am aware of the deleted scene from At World's End where Beckett lays it out pretty much all clear. I had something I wanted you to move. I had this cargo I wanted shipped elsewhere and you outright refused. Your good deed cost me dearly, referring to Jack's releasing of whatever cargo it was, and Jack's infamous response is, people aren't cargo, mate. I do know that this scene exists and was deleted. I actually wanted to make my whole video around this and then didn't realize until it was way too late that this was a deleted scene. So I wanted to focus on what's actually in the movies for the most part, but I do want to acknowledge that that scene carries a lot of weight in terms of where the relationship went wrong, because it comes to their core values fundamentally, freedom versus control and rigidity in society, and that also has to do with in that deeper nuance of their relationship, liking men, not liking men, etc. So just wanted everybody to be aware. I do acknowledge that scene, but I just couldn't fit everything that I wanted to into this video. But I still think it counts. I would introduce you to my friend, but she's a little bit busy getting busy in my clothes, so perhaps at another juncture. I'm gonna stick around. Like I said, I have Hell of a Boss videos and other book reviews. I'm hoping to do a lot more videos like this. I have a lot of fun with it. I want to engage with a very small community, so I look forward to making the next one. For now, bye!